this is cool because just think about it.
Mm-hmm.
How this even started. Reposting a reel
Yes.
a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
Had a little chat here and there.
Yeah.
You said, oh yeah, I work at this restaurant in Hawaii. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, I'm going to be in Hawaii.
And now we're sitting in my brother's house recording a podcast.
Isn't that weird, Kenji?
No, this happens every day in Hawaii.
It does. Well, with us, you know what I mean?
Oh.
Like this kind of stuff. So that's why we allow things to just flow.
So you guys have that energy of just making things happen.
I guess. Yeah. That's our intention, to put it out in the universe and then we attract.
I love that. Because I was just thinking about that last night. I was like, when we met, it was literally like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can I do more work and bring people here to do wine stuff? How can I get you more wine stuff?
Well, I mean, let's talk about that.
All right,
we got a relationship now. So anyway, Taisei from Taisei Discovers, we got a special guest today in Angela McCrae. Currently, she's in Sonoma and working with Black Vintners and just really a proponent for African-American culture. And I'd love for her to speak a little bit more about who she is and why she's here. And Angela.
Oh, thank you. Ty, it's kind of dope to be able to sit here and be in Hawaii for the first time ever. Like, this is my first time on the big island, right? This is Oahu.
Oahu.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, my background, is interesting because I'm a media professional first.
Okay.
And so when I started getting into wine and exploring what was happening during 2020 after George Floyd's murder, and there was this whole movement, almost like a blackening of wine, in my perspective, because I was learning about all these new producers that were Black wine producers. I was learning about these Black wine professionals that were sommeliers, buyers, sales reps, different people in the hospitality space that were literally creating a voice for themselves through the formation of nonprofits. And I just really started, digging deep because I had just gotten back from a 6-week trip to, Africa, and I had a chance to be in Stellenbosch, which is like the Napa of South Africa, and met some Black wine producers. So that was kind of like what sparked my journey from media to wine. And so when I started seeing all these changes happening in this industry and people vocalizing the silence and the lack of equity and inclusion in the wine industry, I knew I needed to share the story. I knew I needed to share that story.
Okay.
And so, when I created Uncorked and Cultured, it was originally just a community-based space on Facebook, a Facebook community. And I realized that people were actually Black and brown people were really trying to get connected and learn about wine, but there was not a intentional effort, from the wine industry to engage them.
And that's where you come in.
And that's where Uncorked and Cultured was started as a
Okay.
Facebook group. And then because my background's in media, I realized that I needed to use the tools and skills I had, in order to bring value to the space.
Okay. So you feel like an innate responsibility with your skill set, your experience, and then paired with your realization when you went to Stellenbosch and you saw these wonderful, passionate Black winemakers, and it's just time to bring it to a global stage, I guess, right?
Yes, a global stage. I love that. So, Uncorked and Culture, when that's what the goal was. That was the vision that I think God put on my spirit, was to create this global kind of intersection of the diaspora through wine, wellness, culture, and adventure. So those are the 4 pillars of my business.
Wow. And I can just tell by the way that you're smiling, the way that you're talking about it, you're extremely passionate. And, I'm also half African-American, half Japanese. And out here in Hawaii, it's a little different for me, what I identify with. And I'm still trying to figure out what it means to be Black. And that's why when we connected, it was something that was intriguing to me, because I was like, hey, maybe I can learn a little bit more about myself and then others that are like me in this industry, and really just be a part of the diversity of it all.
Yeah. And I want to just give you that respect, because how many people are going to actually say that and allow people to join them on that journey, right? To watch that journey. So that says a lot about you and your passion and your intention behind it. And, when you think about like identity, it's really multifaceted. age, location, geography, just music, everything that kind of goes into that cultural experience. And so being here in Hawaii gives you another level of richness when it comes to identifying that Blackness,
Yes.
right? Like I'm noticing that, for me, if you were to talk to me coming from Maryland, DC area, and they ask you, what did you think about people in Hawaii? Or what did you think the culture was in Hawaii? I would just think it was maybe like Asian Black island people.
Yeah.
Because anybody with melanin, I'm going to assume they're Black.
Interesting.
Because if you didn't tell me you were half Japanese, I wouldn't know that.
Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting. So it's such a melting pot here,
Yeah.
the cultures. And I think that like when it comes down to it, I identify with being a local boy from Hawaii, right? But then my ethnicity is Japanese, African-American. That's my blood, right? And being that my father was absent in my life, I never really had a reference of like what it means to be a Black man. And we get a lot of our Blackness from TV, from music, right? And we pull from that. And I started rapping because I thought, hey, that's what a lot of Black men do, and it's cool, it's vibey, and that's me. So I gave it a shot. Comedy, I'm really into comedy. If anybody knows me, they know I'm always clowning. You know what I mean? And I think that has a lot to do with how I looked up to the comedians growing up, like the Will Smiths and the Martin Lawrences, Chris Tuckers. I like the way that they made people laugh. So I started to identify with that type of Blackness, but I think that there's a huge void inside of me that I think I can pull from people like you, right? People that live amongst a lot of Black people and just kind of learn a little bit more about who we are, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's real because we all are. Because when you think about Blackness in America, it's so many different layers to it, right? You have people who are descendants of slavery.
Yes.
You have people that are mixed and multicultural. You have people that are from the continent, which has 52 countries within itself. And then you have people in the Caribbean. And then, you have all these different nuances. And so one of the things that I personally had to like really understand is that Black people, we are not a monolith.
Okay.
So when I grew up in the DC, Maryland area. So it was very much a lot of uniformity.
Okay.
Right. So that means if you dressed a certain way, if you talked a certain way, if you didn't have what we knew was what we were comfortable with, then you would get teased or joked. Right.
Okay.
So what that created at that time was a sense of like, almost like if you don't fit in, then you're not, you're rejected almost.
Okay.
Which is never good, right?
No.
And then as you start experiencing and meeting people from different places that are also Black, you start realizing like, wow, what I knew was Blackness, whether it's cursing or using certain words or listening to certain music or like you said, watching Martin or doing all those kind of like, and I don't want to say stereotypical things, but the stuff that is like highly available, the stuff that is like amplified, then that doesn't make you less Black.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so that was something that I had to learn as I got older, coming from a predominantly Black community, is that Blackness is not a monolith. It's a spectrum of the different types of uniqueness. Like there's Black nerds, there's Black punk rockers.
Yes.
There's Black people that are in karate and like into, different other cultures. And so I feel like it's all about how your spirit moves. So if your spirit moves you through music and through comedy, then that's how you represent it. You know what I mean? But because you have that intersection of culture, I think that's uniquely you.
Wow, that's amazing. Something that stood out from what you said was a spectrum, a full spectrum. You got Black punk rockers, you got Black businessmen, and what does it mean to be Black? I've lived my whole life with people telling me, you ain't Black, because what their understanding of what Black was what they see on TV, and I wasn't necessarily that. So maybe some underlying, I was trying to achieve that, and so be funny, rap, and all that. And though I really love that stuff, that is not what defines me of being Black. I am Black because I am Black, and I'm realizing more than ever that Black is beautiful.
Yes, amen.
I'm proud.
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna, like, with the whole Taisei Discovers channel, I'm discovering who I am, and that's part of it, part of the journey.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I commend you for going on that journey,
Thank you.
and sharing it with us. And I'm going to tell you one thing too, like when you think about social media and how it's used right now, right? Now we have an opportunity to share our stories, but also show that spectrum in a real authentic way.
Yes.
But it has to be a responsible way. Because one of the things that I recognize is just if somebody from another planet or somewhere else was to come and they turn on the wrong social media channel.
That ain't it. Yeah.
So it's important for people like yourself to have that voice to tell that story, so that way the spectrum is being louder than the one small segment that we see a lot of the times.
Okay, I got you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like the influence of the negative stuff outweighs the positive. So if you think about it, right? And I don't want to like, because this is when you start getting kind of sensitive, but like if you think about the Housewives, or you think about Love and Hip Hop, or you think about like, you know, some of these like Samuel, the guy who passed away, Mark, I forget his name, but he was a dating guy. But if you think about all these like, you know, podcasts and stuff that's coming out, and they're not doing a responsible job at showing that spectrum, I think that's kind of damaging. But I love the fact that you're really leaning into it.
Okay, and my take on that is that, you know, everything is balanced, and that's kind of, you kind of need that side too, right? The dark and the light. So and I also think that positivity is definitely stronger than negativity. You know, and I'm not so much into like the like TV and all that, and I really drown out all the negativity that comes across on my feed. Oh, I gotta unfollow that. So I fill my cup with positivity, and then I overflow onto everyone else. You know what I'm saying? So that's my responsibility. But like I think both sides are necessary.
Okay. Well, that's real. I mean, it's polarity, right?
Yes.
Polarity.
Yes.
And I think it is important for people to self-regulate.
Yes.
Mute that stuff. Be like, okay, instead of me going down this black hole, let me come back. Let me shut that off and go to the higher.
I got you. For me, it took a lot of trauma for me to realize that I had to set those boundaries. You know?
Boundaries. How many people talking about that?
I've been talking about it a lot recently. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and you know, and these boundaries that you create for yourself allow you to be more focused, intentional with whatever you're doing. And right now, I have this newfound energy that's allowing me to really create in the way that I want to, and wine is a huge part about it. So I would love to talk to you a little bit more about wine and how you got into it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, you know, I went to Stellenbosch, you know, and I literally got into wine then. That was a seed that was planted.
Okay.
Because when I came back and the pandemic hit, I was like, what am I going to do? You know, I had just left my job, went on this 6-week journey to 6 countries in Africa. Like, what am I going to do? I thought I was going to do like a big festival or like a big conference. I thought I was going to bring people together, but we were all locked in. So it was a really tough time to try to figure out what was next for myself. But everybody was buying wine. I was buying wine. I was coping literally through wine. And so I became a wine ambassador. And so that was my entry point where I really learned about selling wine. I built that community, Uncorked and Cultured, on Facebook to really start identifying. And it grew really fast. And once that kind of like shift happened where organizations like the Roots Fund, Black Wine Professionals, Wine Unify, Hispanics in Wine, all these, you know, groups started forming to create a safe space of growth, opportunity, and you know, inclusion for wine professionals. I knew I can do this. This is my lane, because it's being authentic to me, right?
Yes.
I'm not a wine professional by far. I haven't never worked in hospitality, but I've worked in media. I've been an advocate for DE&I, and I'm passionate. You know what I mean?
Yes, you are.
And I know how to bring people together. I know how to create those communities, or at least activate them. And so the first thing I did was create a directory called Subconsciously of 100 Black wine businesses.
Wow.
Because when you talk to people, you're like, what? How do you know? Where's this Black person, or who does this? And everybody's like, well, you know, I know somebody here, I know somebody there. You know, it wasn't a kind of global directory at the time in 2021. There would be some articles or some lists of maybe like 15, 20 people, but they were all wine producers. But when you think about, you can have a product, but how do you get it to the customer? In the US, it's a whole 3-tiered process to get there. You know, the distributor.
Yes.
And then, you know, what you do, which is the person that actually creates that space for people to buy it and try it. And where do we own that, or where are we present in that? And ownership is always my biggest thing, is entrepreneurship. And you know, it was a huge resource. It's still available now. We have over 200 you know, businesses on that list. And from there, I just really started using my skill sets to amplify. So I was producing events virtually, because I come from a television production background. I knew how to format. I knew how to just create the visuals and editing and all that. Because I came from a kind of like a nonprofit impact and digital marketing background, I knew how to like leverage those relationships, reach out to other communities to bring them in, show them the value, and then be intentional about how to capture that data and those insights to show success and growth. And so that was kind of like the core, is like literally just leaning into my background, my professional background, and then letting my passion kind of move it forward.
Okay. It's so interesting for somebody from Hawaii to be talking about African Americans banding together, because I'm not around a lot of African Americans, and I think naturally being from Hawaii, melting pot, I just see everyone as humans for the most part. You know what I mean? So there was always something inside of me that created a little friction when things were exclusive. Like, this is the black group, this is a white group, this is a Mexican group. But I'm starting to understand the importance of it, because in other parts of the world, mentalities are different, right? And the cultures are different. They're not melting pots necessarily. A lot of times they're segregated and this is an exclusive group. But there's something empowering about that for those type of situations that I'm starting to understand, and I'm seeing the importance of it in talking to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that I can actually open up that perspective for you.
Thank you.
Because literally I interviewed someone during the pandemic. He worked for a distributor, and he was on the sales side.
Okay.
And I interviewed him, and I interviewed a man who worked at a custom crush facility in California, who was making the wine for, multiple brands. And they both shared their unfortunate experiences of being black men working in the wine space from two different sides of it, but just because they were black. So that meant someone's, saying, trying to challenge them, constantly challenge them, or make it seem like they weren't qualified. One guy said that when he was making the wine and they were just having a tour come in, someone was like, I could smell the Obamacare on that wine. Like, just random, like unnecessary type of things, right? But then when you look at it from South Africa side of it, I just was there. So we did a transcontinental conversation around black wine entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And me and Dr. Monique Bell, who I partnered with to do the Subconsciously Directory, she's like my partner and sister in wine. She's a professor and researcher. We both spoke in South Africa, and we learned that they have their whole wine industry was built on the backs of the black people there, the Cape Malay black people there. And they weren't getting paid at one point. At another point, instead of getting paid, they were given wine. It's called the DOP system. So what this created was this multi-generational addiction to alcohol. It created alcohol, challenges for kids that were being now born. So now it's a medical concern. But then the most important thing, that's even the worst thing, is it created no wealth. So that meant as they're making millions of dollars off this industry, they have literally put these people in the most difficult deficit that you can imagine for hundreds of years. And they're still trying to get out of it. And it's not a proactive effort. It has to be constant movement for the white farm owners to give equity, to give equal pay, right? We talked to sommeliers there who are three times certified, who've been working in hospitality for 10 plus years, but a white person can come in there with no certifications. They got to train them, and they're getting paid double their pay just because they're white.
That sounds like European influence in any native, part of the world. Hawaiians, Native Americans, right? So I guess now so that's also why it's extremely important for us to band together, inspire each other, and support each other to lift us up to the next level. But for me, I'm not like I said, I'm island boy, right? So I'm very I accept everyone, right? And I'm always a little afraid of division, because division sometimes create enemies, right? So I guess maybe I'll be like the glue. You know what I mean? I want to be an ambassador of the black culture, but also just humanity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I love that you say that, like, you're not a fan of division. And just know that these spaces aren't actually creating division. They're actually creating intention.
Okay.
So when you think about these organizations, they're not just all Black people. There are white allies behind them. They are investing in this opportunity to give people resources. So when you go to these, so like for instance, I'm the executive director of the Association of AfricanAmerican Vintners.
Okay.
This organization was started in 2002, so over 20 years ago, by 4 Black farmers, Black grape growers, winemakers, and the intention was because they weren't getting access and resources from their white peers. So they was like, well, we need to figure this out. So how about we kind of create something where we can share resources and share information? It wasn't about excluding white people. It was just they were being excluded, so they wanted to create a safe space for themselves. So it was literally that. But what ended up happening is, as the organization grew, there were allies that were in each of their lives that they were able to share, right? Because we don't own a supply chain.
Yeah.
We're not the decision makers.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So throughout these years, we're having to navigate this nuance, and we're doing it through collaboration, co-opetition, right? So It's like you collaborate, but then you even know your competitors. And so even with this organization being around 20 years, we given scholarships to all types of people. Our members, we're inclusive, so anybody can be a member.
Nice.
But what you are investing in is making wine inclusive through community, education, and advocacy. And that means making sure underrepresented people have access.
I love it. Well, whatever way I can be a part of it, you know what I mean? I'd love to. One of the interesting things is that for me, in my position as a general manager of a world-class restaurant, my guests, I get this all the time. They don't know who I am. They think I'm a guest in the restaurant that just happens to be walking around. Because you can't be a general manager, or you do the wine list. What got you into wine, young man? You know what I mean? I get that all the time, but it actually works for this situation, because being that I'm not offended by it, it can play in my favor when I give them the love. You know what I'm saying? And then before you know it, I'm changing their perception of what a future sommelier can be, or somebody that's passionate about wine, somebody that's providing or curating a space where people can have dining experiences. And then it just becomes this whole mystery thing for the guests. And then I change their whole perception of what that person in that position can be, right? And then I also like to own the way I look, being a brother, being African American and Japanese. I own both, you know what I mean, equally. But it's a good platform for me to change perceptions, and I try to do my part in little ways as well.
Well, that's how it is, right? We have to be conduits, or we have to be ambassadors for change at the end of the day, by showing up with integrity, by showing up with intention, by showing up with welcoming people in, right?
Yes.
So I think your perspective is on the side of what we all need to be thinking about. But in all honesty, when you're in a city like New York, if you're in down south in a place like, Alabama or Florida, or like even Atlanta or places like that, you have to deal with that every day of your life.
Got you.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's where, when you listen to those songs, or you hear those those comedies or what have you, and you hear some of that anger, or you hear some of that frustration, or that hopelessness, or what have you, it's because they don't have the luxury of living in paradise.
I got
where
you.
everybody's just one person, is just all love, right?
Yeah.
They're living like a hard life where who they are, they're invisible sometimes everywhere they go. And so that is where the intentionality comes into play. And that's where we try to create spaces where we see you, here goes some, scholarship. We see you, here goes a grant. We relate to you, as opposed to you having to sit in front of a white business person or decision maker, or you have to go into a bank where nobody looks like you, and you have to try to convince them to support you.
Wow. You're doing God's work.
I mean, I think we all are, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I would hope so.
Oh, man. That's so inspiring to me, and I really admire the work that you're doing, and I'm sure that, as time goes on, we'll be able to do more things together, and yeah. It's
So can I ask you a question?
You can ask me whatever you want.
All right. So when you talk about future sommelier, I mean, you've been in this role for a while. You're actually giving people opportunities. You're opening doors for others.
Yes.
While you're going on this journey of into wine, what inspired this wine shift?
I would say so. I was always interested in wine. I worked in that restaurant for 20 years, and I was always around it. And there was a certain point where I became a server, and then I saw the passion of my former general manager, And he was a wonderful man that was super passionate, and I kind of he kind of ignited my spark for it, you know. And throughout the years, I would take trainings, I'd go to classes and stuff, but I never took a lot of things serious. I was a natural at a lot of things, so I was able to just coast through many different situations. But now in my position, you know, I do exactly what a sommelier does. I purchase the wine, I formulate the wine list, I recommend, I hand sell bottles, I talk to people, I discuss things, I tell stories about the wines, and I love it. And I realize that that's what a sommelier does. I don't need the pin, but now it's more of a personal challenge for me. It's okay, how hard can you work to achieve something? You know what I mean? And there is a lot of studying, there's a lot of intention, you have to put a lot of effort that, you know, I don't think I'm used to giving. And so I studied for the intro, and I passed that. I did really well, actually. And I was really, really stoked about that. And it showed me, okay, maybe there's something here. And why not become a certified sommelier?
Yeah.
Right? For myself.
Yep.
I already do what a sommelier does, but this is more for a personal challenge.
You know, when I first I got level 1
Okay.
for WSET. And what it did is it helped me become more confident. Because it's one thing to like be in the market with it, but it's another thing when you're like, I know how it's made. I know how this is, you know what I mean? Like it's constantly that. And right now I'm in an apprenticeship program. So I moved to Sonoma from New York City back in July 2023. And what I realized is even being in a winery, like working within that space, like literally being in the vineyard, touching the grapes, like being a part of the winemaking staff.
Yes.
You know, understanding, working with a legacy brand like Silver Oak, that literally has allowed me to even level up that confidence. Because now, just when I say that word, Silver Oak, the respect is there immediately.
Amazing.
Just like once you get your, you know, next level education or your next certification, when you say that in certain rooms, the respect is just going to be there. And, you know, unfortunately, like that's the world we live in. We have to be validated.
Understood.
Right?
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you're saying, I ain't doing it for I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah.
So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. So your first level, as
Yep.
in like a certified sommelier?
Well, not a
Or-
sommelier, just a WSET level 1.
Okay. So that's kind of equivalent to what I am too.
Okay.
Right? You take the intro, 70 questions, multiple choice, right? You have
Yep.
to pass a certain amount. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
We did it. I mean, but you know, I do want to take level 2.
Yeah.
I want to do some of those other things, but it does. It's definitely a commitment because you got to study and all that. So
There's a lot of studying.
that time.
Yeah.
That time when you're doing the work.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and it's just like how many general managers of a fine dining world class restaurant is taking that time to do that.
Yeah, you're right.
I
Okay.
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
so I just wanted to talk a little bit about Uncorked and Cultured and what,
Please.
because that is my baby.
Let's go.
So I want to tell you about Uncorked and Cultured because
Okay.
I think when I first started it, people was like, what is it? What's Uncorked and Cultured? And I was like, well, it's a media company. Okay, well, what does it do? So Uncorked and Cultured is a media company where we have a website, a publication, a digital publication where we publish articles, literally telling the stories of Black and brown winemakers, wine professionals, what's happening in these regions, what's happening in these unique communities. Like we've even talked about deaf wine professionals. We've talked about Michigan as an evolving AVA or, you know, wine region, as well as Virginia, which is one of the first, it's the first wine region in the U.S. Nobody talks about
In
it.
Virginia?
Yeah.
Oh.
You have to keep in mind, where was the founding fathers?
I guess you're right.
So when you think about the founding fathers, when they were coming from Europe and they're, you know, creating the nation,
Yes.
Thomas Jefferson specifically, he had a vineyard. The first stewards of wine were slaves. So Black people were the original sommeliers in this country, in Virginia.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And people don't talk about it. But when you go to Virginia, they're going to let you know.
Yeah.
So there's groups like Enoverse. They actually do this Eno camp every year. You should probably check it out. I'll send you details. But it's a way for you to really understand and connect with that community, right?
Okay.
So Uncorked and Culture, we've done, you know, stories on that. You know, I have a team of contributors and writers. You know, we also I used to do a lot of video interviews. So I would do like Zooms and stuff and kind of just talk to people, you know, and really tell their stories. And so we do events as well. So we do events with winemaker sessions where we have Black wine producers, introducing them to communities like Harlem. I did quite a few in Harlem.
Wow.
Well, you know, so it's like bringing Black winemakers to Harlem.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? Which was really dope because it was something that I felt was unique because instead of just doing it at a restaurant, I was going into like these unique situations like art galleries or like coffee shops.
Nice.
You know, so it was like taking this experience and creating it into a new place, which is important because right now the wine industry the sales are going down across the country.
Really?
Yeah, wine sales are going down like 10%.
Okay.
Almost.
Why?
Trends. I mean, what you got to keep in mind. So the baby boomers. So I went to the wine, Unified Grape Wine Symposium back in January. And what they said, this statistic is crazy. They said every week, 20,000 boomers die.
Wow.
Right?
20. Okay.
In a country.
Okay.
And that's a hard number when you think about it to just hear. But they was letting it know straight up. Like, listen, you guys are focusing on these old white men as your consumer. But guess what? 20,000 of them are dying every week.
Okay.
So when you look at that number, right, and then you look at younger people who's entering the wine category or just the 21 and up, like kind of like alcohol consumption, the Gen Z kids or younger people, they're like a lot of them aren't necessarily, they think alcohol isn't good for them, right? They have all these different categories to choose from. They have, of course, beer and spirits, but they also have ready to drink, kind of like cocktails in a can. You know, they have seltzers.
Yeah.
They have low alc. You know, they have all these things that aren't traditional in the wine industry. And so what that does is it, you know, makes people go into other directions. Then there's this whole health, you know, USDA and all these health, you know, World Health Organization, they're all now challenging the benefits versus the risks of alcohol. So these conversations are being had on a really high level that is really having an impact on the business. And so one of the key things that was identified through the Wine Market Council recently, through their recent report that came out last month, is that if you want to survive, you got to start looking at younger and multicultural audiences.
Okay.
So multicultural audiences. So this is something that me and Dr. Monique Bell talked about in 2022 with Napa Valley Vintners. So we did a whole training exercise for their members to really help them get in touch with more multicultural audiences in an authentic way.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because if you think about it, like, you know, when depending on who you're talking to will determine what their consumption habits are. And then depending on what they like and what experiences they like and what they're willing to invest in will help you determine how you can connect them to wine. So a lot of people now during the pandemic, we always drink wine. Wine sales was like through the roofs. Then as doors started opening up, how are people now experiencing wine? They're not drinking it at home by themselves anymore. You know, that's not the number one way people drink wine. They drink it to relax. They drink it over food. They drink it with family and friends.
Yeah.
You know, it's an experience. And so how do you connect that product to that experience? And so people are now more people of color, Black people specifically, are going to wine regions. Wine tourism's going up in the Black community. You got to look at it like people are doing more festivals.
Okay.
There's a lot of Black, you know, wine festivals happening. Afro beats and wine, or like,
like
you know what I
that.
mean?
Yeah.
Like different things like that. It's like creating that cultural connection to the, you know, to the experience is key.
And wine, it has an air of classiness about it, right? And I feel like, you know, jazz music and wine, you know, hip hop music and wine pairs really well.
Oh yeah.
The mood, the
It's
vibe.
sexy.
It's sexy with the glass,
Yeah.
and you know. So yeah, wow,
Yeah.
a lot of possibilities. So where do you feel Uncorked and Cultured is headed?
So I'm glad you asked that because, you know, during the past year, I've been really focused on learning the business through my apprenticeship with Silver Oak. So shout out to Sadell McCall, my editorial manager, because he's been holding it down with our contributors and pumping out the content. So right now, my goal is to scale. So every year I try to focus on scalability. And so wanting to do larger scale events, wanting to invest in more marketing and promotion, like just raising the money so that I can build the audience more advertising dollars. So always looking for brands, whether it's lifestyle brands, wine brands, wellness brands, right? Because our 4 pillars is lifestyle driven: wine, wellness, culture, adventure. So those are the 4 pillars of the brand. So that's what's the connecting point. Because if you don't like wine, or if you're uncertain about wine, or you're not passionate about wine, you might be passionate about travel. You might be passionate about culture. So that's kind of like the hook to get you in.
I got you.
You know what I mean? To take you through the experience, to be more invested, and to be more empowered as a consumer.
Wow. So 4 pillars.
Yeah.
I love it.
4 pillars. Yeah.
I love it. Wow. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to mention about any projects that you have coming up, or any last words?
So I would just want to talk a little bit about the Association of African-American Vintners. So I mentioned the organization, AAAV is what it's affectionately known. So the Association of African-American Vintners, our goal is to create resources, access, education, and then provide, support to our members. And, we have every year we give out scholarships to Wine Spirit Education Trust, where we allow members to learn. We provide them with scholarships for level 1, 2, 3, and then also some specialized certifications. We give out about 40 scholarships per year. Last year, one of my baby projects was developing the AAAV Wine Entrepreneurship Grant, where we were able to give out $5,000 grants to 5 of our members.
Wow.
That was my baby, because as an entrepreneur, I know how hard it is. It's so hard to get funding for your business. Yes. And I know $5,000 may not be a lot, but after our first cohort completed, received that funding, they were able to, get websites redone. They were able to get, hire sales representatives in the marketplace for events. They were able to get labels or do things so they can get into Whole Foods. They were able to, just get education for themselves or their staff. So these type of small injections of cash into businesses might be small, but for a small business owner, it can be it could really pivot their business into a new direction. And so we're going to do that again this year. So I'm excited about it. We've had some really amazing corporate sponsors that supported us through that, through fundraising efforts and donations. So we're going to be opening that up in August for Black Business Month. So we'll be giving out $5,000 grants to 5 of our members. We don't select the members that receive the money. It's a panel of distinguished, industry professionals, because we feel it's important for us to have them hear these stories. They have to read their applications. They have to understand their journey. They have to hear what challenges that they face, right?
Yes.
Because if it's just us talking to each other, it's not enough movement being made. It's getting those stakeholders and those decision makers to hear our stories.
Wow. Well, I just want to say that I admire you, your strength and your spirit. And I'm in your corner. You know what I mean? Like, whatever I can do to help, I'd love to support. I think that'd be very important for you. Let the people know, like, where they can reach you, how they can follow you, and maybe even connect with you in the future. So you're at?
Oh, yeah. At Uncorked and Cultured. Okay. At Uncorked and Cultured. That's the handle to reach me at. But then also, if you're interested in, like, advocating and supporting and donating to a nonprofit that's doing the work, the Association of African-American Vintners, that is at AfricanAmerican Vintners on Instagram. And our website is AAAVintners.org. So you can learn more about the organization. And then, of course, you can always, reach out to me through Uncorked and Cultured as well.
Wow. Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. And I know you still got a couple of days in Hawaii left. So please enjoy the aloha spirit.
Thank you.
And Angela, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm proud to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah.